General Edward Buba said in a news conference at the defense headquarters that painstaking efforts were made using intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance in picking the target before the strike on Christmas Day. And in a related development, he dismissed claims by the Nigerian junta that Nigeria is being used as a French staging post to destabilize the Sahelian country.
3 days after a coordinated military operation in 2 communities in Sokoto resulted in the death of 10 people whose identities are now being investigated to determine if they were terrorists or civilians. Director of Defense Media Operations says painstaking efforts were made using intelligence reconnaissance and surveillance to pick the target identified as Lakurawa camps.
That operation will have taken place earlier. But because of the painstaking measures that we know that we need to put in, we decided to hold it to make sure that those that were seen at that location were indeed terrorists, Lakurawa terrorist group. And we did that by sending human intelligence to confirm. And they got back to us and confirmed that, yes. And it was thereafter that we carried out a joint operation, a combined synchronized operation with the Air Force and ground forces.
He explains how the unintended targets lost their lives.
One of the targets was a logistic base of the terrorists in the community. When I talk of logistic base, I'm talking of arm cartridges and pole that were kept there. So naturally, when the munition hits that, there will be secondary explosion arising from that, which will generate, other things flying in the air, which was what led to the death of about 10 persons that were reported.
While the outcome of investigation is being awaited, the military authorities also dismissed claims by the Nigerian junta that Nigeria is being used as a French staging post to destabilize the Sahelian country.
When it comes to foreign base, we do not have. Whether any country, there is no foreign base in Nigeria. And the reasons are also not far-fetched. We do not want our country to be a ground for proxy war. You accept one person, the enemy of that person will start following you. That is proxy war. We don't want that. So anywhere you hear anybody talking like that as a distraction. I heard one of the African leaders say something like that. That's a distraction from him tackling the problem in his country.
While the last may not have been heard about the issue, the federal government says troops will continue to target terrorists in the country.
Now let's begin with the allegations coming from the junta in the Niger Republic. Joining me is the special advisor to the president on policy communication, Daniel Bwala. Mr. Bwala, thanks for joining us on the news tonight. What do you consider the implications of these accusations and what has been Nigeria's response?
Well, first of all, the allegation is false. The allegation is baseless, and I think it is malicious. But this is not strange because one problem with military interregnum and junta is that whenever they come to take over power, the impulse, the zeal, far outweigh planning. So whenever they take over, usually there is the initial honeymoon they have with the populace. But after a while, when the honeymoon is over, you'll be required to govern. It is at that point, most military leadership, they lose sight of exactly what they intend to do. That is exactly what is happening to the leader of Niger. No plan, has terrible economic situation, and so many things are going bad. So he's scapegoating, and he decided to level this baseless allegation. Nigeria is self-sufficient. The Nigerian armed forces have all the capacities to protect and safeguard lives and property and our territorial integrity. Even when we had the deepest Boko Haram war, we never provided our platforms as a foreign base for any foreign armed forces or foreign soldiers. And so he knows for a fact that that is not true. But the bigger part of it is that it seems like he's in cahoot with some politicians in Nigeria because what he did was deliberate and intended to mislead a population in Nigeria that come from the northern extraction. He granted the interview in a local language and leveled allegations that cannot be substantiated. Nigeria has played a very, very important role in this geopolitical setting. Nigeria has been a leader in the West African sub-region. Nigeria has assisted and continues to assist our West African neighbors. So the allegation is quite unfortunate.
I hear you, but are there diplomatic alternatives considering that Niger remains a neighbor?
Obviously, diplomacy will never, you never say never in diplomacy. And also in diplomacy, you'll be able to tighten your end and express your displeasure. Definitely, Nigeria as a country is not comfortable and happy with that kind of baseless allegation. There are many channels. There are direct channels and indirect channels. And we have our embassies, our embassy in that country. Again, we have the National Intelligence Agency. We have the National Security Advisor. We have all of these platforms that could have been used. And if you recall, not long ago, we had a visit by, I think, Nigerian envoy in those countries. So we have been exploring diplomatic means of settling what they have, incurred to themselves with this view of planning to leave the ECOWAS. So, but we are yet to determine what is the motivation behind that. But all we know is first to refute the claim and express our displeasure over that careless statement or careless interview that was rendered with unsubstantiated allegation against the government of Nigeria and against the President of the Federal Republic. It is intended to set the northern Nigeria against the government of Nigeria and against the President. That's why it was calculated and it was carried out in a local language, all in a bid to mislead the large populace of our people.
Niger, alongside Burkina Faso and Mali, exited ECOWAS. But what do you consider the implication of this new development on efforts to tackle regional insecurity like the JTF, which aims to combat terrorism in the Sahel region?
I think the position of the ECOWAS is quite clear, led by the President of Nigeria, President Bwala Tinubu, who said that while we uphold the ideals of democracy and the standard upon which ECOWAS as a body consists and operates, and then while we also respect their right to leave the community and then explore other options, even when they leave the community based on the timelines, ECOWAS continues to say it will engage with them in areas of mutual benefit. You can look at trade, you can look at transport, you can also look at fight against terrorism. So ECOWAS as a body is open. Nigeria as a country is not only providing the leadership, but also leading in this endeavor. So the position of ECOWAS has actually not changed. In terms of fight against insurgency or terrorism in the Sahel, of course, you can never overestimate the role that the Nigerian government has been playing, both in terms of the military provision of personnel and in terms of logistics as well. And so Nigeria will continue to play that role in order to safeguard and in order to ensure that the Sahel does not become a platform by which so many proxy wars are going to be fought there.
We understand Niger's disposition to France, following the coup d'etat and its new alliance with Russia and what have you. But how do you think Nigeria can balance its relationship with France and good relations with its neighbors in Niger?
I don't think that the problem between Niger and France will be one that will affect the relationship between Nigeria and France or Nigeria and Niger. One thing about international diplomacy and national interest is that everybody pursue what they believe to be their national interest and national security. And Nigeria stands to play the mediating role, which is, of course, what the leadership of President Bwala Tinubu is even providing in ECOWAS. We just had the ECOWAS meeting about a week or 2 weeks ago in Abuja, where some of these positions were laid bare and made clear, not just to the West African countries, but also to the countries that are intending to leave the community. So diplomacy will continue to explore all of these options that are available for the ECOWAS as against these ones that are trying to leave the ECOWAS in a bid to see how they can be convinced to see that they do not have a future. The truth of the matter is that in this present globalization, you cannot exist in isolation. 3 nations cannot form a union that will provide prosperity. So whatever is the impulse behind that decision, the hope of ECOWAS is that they will guide them into understanding the broader picture. There's always a bigger picture.
Special Advisor to the President on Policy Communication, Daniel Bwala, thank you for your thought on the news tonight.
Thank you.
When we return after this break,